of the Queen's Head begins long before the Queen's Head. The story of the Queen's Head began in 1797 when three brothers came from New York. The brothers were of German descent, and they were the Zimmerman brothers. And there was Peter, James, and Matthias. And they actually moved to Beamsville, and James actually was the one who had 10 children. And back then, you got land by land grants. And Peter, because he had 10 children, wanted more land. He said, I've got 10 children, I need more space. Denied. So some of those children married into families that had land, and some of those children got their own land grants. And in order to have a land grant, you had to clear the land. You were given a certain acreage, you cleared the land, and you built a house on it. Two sons, Peter and Matthias, left. Two brothers left Beamsville, and they had heard that in Holton region, Holton County, you could get easier land grants. So Peter and Matthias moved to Zimmerman. There were already Zimmermans there. It was a very prolific family. In fact, I think it was 1867, the North American Zimmerman family became part of an inheritance from the German branch, and they were part of a $35 million inheritance in 1867. Now, nowhere have they ever said how much these people got, because they were spenders. So Peter and Matthias moved to Holton. Peter moved up to Appleby Line and number 2 Side Road, where another Zimmerman, Henry, was already located. And with all of their children, with all of the land grants that they had, this booming village emerged. There was a grist mill, there was a sawmill, there was a school with 80 students, there was a shoe shop. They just had this vibrant village up there. Methodists, there was a Methodist church and very strong Methodism up there, Wesleyan Methodism. Matthias moved to Wellington County, and it's believed that he lived on Martha Street. And Matthias's son, Peter, so we had Peter the elder, Peter the junior, and now we have Peter the grandson. And it was Peter M. Zimmerman who built, apparently at great cost, the Queen's Head. So I just walked along here, I walked along Elgin, and looking at the Queen's Head and trying to compare the Queen's Head today with the Zimmerman house of 1860. And if you look at photographs of the Zimmerman house, or it became the Queen's Hotel later on in the 1800s, you can notice that on the second floor there was a veranda, and it was a beautiful white wooden veranda that went all along this Elgin side and turned north onto Brant Street, that unfortunately they have taken down. And it would be lovely to see them restore that to the original beauty of the Zimmerman house or the Queen's Hotel of years ago.
He was the grandson.
He was the grandson, yes. He built the Queen's Head, but he didn't want to run the Queen's Head. He wasn't a manager. He was a builder. He was an entrepreneur. He wanted to make money. So he rented it to a gentleman by the name of Peter Evans. And Peter Evans ran the Queen's Head, which morphed into the Queen's Hotel, which morphed into the Sherwood Hotel. It was originally called the Zimmerman House. And you will be able to go and see pictures of, there was a rail car, there was an electric rail that came along Elgin Street. It was the Hamilton Radial Electric Railway. And it came all the way from Hamilton and came along Elgin, and I'm sure it turned north and turned south, and that ran until from 1897 to probably 1930, somewhere there. And they didn't take the rails up from Elgin until about 1950, 1960, somewhere there. So that was Peter M. Zimmerman. Okay, so the Queen's Head it is apparently the longest serving open hotel and pub in the Burlington area. The Poacher does claim to be the longest pub, the oldest pub, but I think the Queen's Head takes the cake because it's hotel and pub. And they advertised the Queen's Head as serving luxury clients a very high level of service. And the electric railway, the radial rail that many people today have never heard of, came in from Hamilton. It was the Hamilton Radial Electric Railway, and there were tracks all the way along here on Elgin, passing by the Queen's Head. I'm assuming that there would be a stop on the corner here. People can get out and come and have a drink or a meal or stay at the Queen's Head. And you know what's really a shame, because it's COVID, and normally this patio would be absolutely packed with people. It's probably one of the most popular patios in downtown Burlington. But I do have a story. I do have a backstory. Sorry, it's my friend. I do have a backstory about Zimmerman and Zimmerman Village, and it's a fun, bad, nasty story. So there was this gentleman by the name of Thomas the Dark Corner. And Thomas Corner was born in 1797, and he came from Ireland. He went to New York, but by 1806 he was in Canada, and he actually fought in the 1812 war on the side of the British against the Americans. He had a brother, Richard. Richard fought on the other side. So Thomas and Richard were really not friends. Richard did not like Thomas. Thomas wasn't a nice guy. So after the war, Thomas forged his father's signature on a document and sold land belonging to the family that did not belong to him. He sold his dad's land. He sold away part of his brother's inheritance. So Richard shoots Thomas, and the court documents say with an intent to kill. However, Thomas did not die, and Robert goes to jail. No, I'm sorry. Richard goes to jail, and Thomas survives. And Richard died in jail 2 years later. So the next thing we hear about Thomas is that he shoots his daughter. Why he shot his daughter, we do not know, but he shoots his daughter. Doesn't kill her, but shoots his daughter. He goes to Kingston Penitentiary for 5 years. The next thing we know about Thomas, he's out of jail and he's living in Zimmerman. The story goes that Thomas had at least 7 wives, plus 4 or 5 live-in girlfriends. So the last wife, Ellen, living with him, and she also had her niece, Catherine, living in the house with him, with them both. And Thomas decides he doesn't want Ellen anymore. Ellen's got to go. He's looking for wife number 8, whatever it is. And Ellen isn't around, and Thomas is drunk. Thomas is drunk, and he has a gun. And he is going around the neighborhood with the gun, asking the neighbors where Ellen was. Well, Ellen comes back. She's been to get more liquor. So Ellen herself was drunk. She comes back with the liquor, and Thomas shoots her, dead. So Ellen is dead. Catherine, the niece, comes back in. She too is inebriated. Thomas shoots Catherine, who manages to crawl out of the house into a neighboring apple orchard, where a neighbor finds her. She survives long enough to be able to tell the story of what happened. So Thomas, in the meantime, goes to bed. Thomas is fast asleep in his bed with the smoking gun on his chest. The police come in to arrest him. Thomas wakes up. I know nothing about this. And obviously he had no, I say obviously, he said he had no recall of the incident. However, they found him guilty, and I believe it was in 1898, he was hung at Milton Jail. So that was the end of Thomas, who was really not a nice guy, from Zimmerman. So Peter died in 1906 and is buried in Greenwood Cemetery along with his 2 sons.